What's up?
We're rolling.
We're rolling. We're here with Taylor Symmank. Is that how I say it? Symmank?
Oh, yeah.
All right, fantastic. Taylor, thanks for joining us, man. We're excited to get this rolling. We're very hot.
It is warm.
It's warm in the room.
It is officially warm in Texas.
Cool 82.
Yeah, it's a brisk 82.
The Nest is telling me one thing, and I know it's a lie. We might have configured the Nest sensor improperly about 45 minutes ago. We're going to get through it, though. We have bottles of water and a lot of passion.
A lot of passion, a lot of heart. You know, you can't substitute either of those.
You can't do it. So, Taylor, why don't we jump in? Give us the quick rundown of who you are and why you're so freaking jacked up to be sitting with us right now.
Don't lie.
But be authentic.
Where do I start, right?
Yeah.
Jeez. I guess I'll start why I'm so jacked up. Let's see. I mean, who was it that introduced me and you together? Was it
Grant Skelton, I think.
Grant Skelton? Yeah. So when he introduced me to you, he was telling me about because he knows you for, what do you know you through? I'm trying to remember now.
I got involved. I can't remember. I went to one of his events. They had like a worship night, and I went and I met some people, and then I got connected with him on Instagram or something.
Were you speaking it?
No. Oh, and then I met him again at it's a Christian men's networking thing in Dallas at the country club. He came and spoke. It's the one that Summit runs. What's that one called? Wingman. I met him at a Wingman thing again.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think he had already introduced us before that.
Okay, cool.
I told him about what I was doing with athletes, and he's like, I know a guy who he's kind of on the fringes of the NFL, and he might really want to get to know you. And he said he lived in Plano and all that kind of stuff, or Frisco or something like that.
Cool.
So, anyway.
Yeah, so he was telling me about you, and I was like, cool, let's connect. And then we connected, I guess, about a year ago now almost. So kind of off and on kind of deal. But just like-minded people, honestly. I mean, obviously you played as well, Bryce. And so just want to be around like-minded people, and especially this age, especially being out here away from school. There's not especially in McKinney, honestly, everybody in my age is in Dallas. So getting to connect with people that are my age, anything like that, just because in college you're around a bunch of group of people that are your age, kind of like ambitions, X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
But then when you get kind of in the real world, so to say, it's not really the same.
You gotta like go back to find your group a little bit, and you gotta be more like intentional about it, especially when you're no longer playing sports. Because like you just hang out with the guys on the team usually, but if you don't have a team anymore, you're like, I gotta find my team a little bit,
right?
So that's cool, man. That's cool.
That's the hardest part, I feel like, about the transition out. When you're in the locker room, especially just college in general. You're playing ping pong, Madden, dominoes, going to get wings.
You did the ping pong thing. I hated those guys. Would you be the guy in the gym shorts and like your hands down your pants, and you're kind of just like, and you're shirtless, and there's music on, and LL Cool J? You're a talented guy.
Thank you. I appreciate it, but I don't know what kind of ping pong tournaments you've been to.
That vision got really weird, by the way.
We just play normal ping pong. I don't know. We
got really into FIFA. I was more into FIFA.
FIFA's great. FIFA's great.
Black Ops.
Yeah, true. But the point of what I was trying to say
Let's get back.
Before it took a rabbit hole there, was that you're just always around your guys, and then you get to the league, like and those guys have families now. And so when you break huddle and you take showers, go to the locker room, whatever, now is this going to be one of those days? It's going to be one of those nights. You had to take showers because you're sweaty, everything's eyes up. There's no need.
Is that the policy on that?
No need to laugh. But anyways, those guys go home, and so very very similar. You come, you come to work, and you might have a happy hour you have to go to, but then it's like there's an agenda to a happy hour. You got to swap business cards now.
That's exhausting too.
So we need to bring Madden back. Maybe we should do it here. Can we have like a Madden tournament?
I was actually thinking about building the podcast a little bit around like Monday Night Football when it gets back into the swing, because Monday Night Football, if your team's not playing, you just want to watch the game because it's entertaining. It doesn't need to be like a great game, and like you're just here, and there's a social element to that.
Right.
We do the podcast, and then we have maybe a big screen that's playing the game, and we play some games and stuff during the game and drink some beers. That'd be fun.
Good for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, help me execute on that.
Execute.
Like it's like a strategy.
I know. That's why I'm here, Chad. Damn it, I couldn't execute. Anyways, so let's talk about. This is your second shot.
Now we can do social events.
So let's talk about kind of where you're at right now. I mean, we alluded to it a little bit. So you did play in the league. Tell us about your I guess, experience in the league, and then kind of what life looks like now a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll go back to college, kind of set the scene, I guess. So my senior year, I'm going into the season, kind of getting
Texas Tech, right?
Yeah, Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Did y'all lose to Baylor yet? No.
Dude, why are you doing that all the time?
My fault. We just beat Tech a lot. Go Bears. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
That's fair. And then so my senior year, going into the season, getting the hang of things, because I didn't start punting until I got to college, because the first school I was at, Texas was my second school.
Okay, so you transferred.
So I transferred from basically Southern Arkansas as a school, then transferred to Tech, just because it was one of those schools that, I mean, no disrespect, but they just weren't there yet as far as winning. Like, we won one game and it was close.
Oh, wow.
And every other game it got kind of blown out. So
you punted a lot though.
It was great.
Yeah,
that was right. That was the biggest blessing right there.
Killing it. You're killing it.
Because this first year I was like, exactly. I punted over 100 times.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Wait, and there's how many games? Like 11?
Yeah, because we didn't make playoffs or anything anything.
Just the season.
Extra. It's like 10.
Not
basically
even one
like
of those consolation bowls.
Basically about average.
I've never heard of that in 1 year.
1 year. Yeah.
That's kind of cool, because you can be like, the number of punts you put within the 20-yard line is just, that's the percentage.
Right. Plus, you're like the captain of the team. You're like out there every other play.
They're like, hey, we got to showcase this Symmank kid. I mean, he's always out there.
Oh, my God.
He looks good. He's
wild.
wild. That's funny, man.
So, yeah, going there was honestly the best thing. At the time, I didn't like it, just because it was out in the middle of nowhere. The school was 1,000 kids in the whole school. So, like, coming from Boyd around here, which is in Dallas, I mean, I graduated 3,000. So it's
you
like
went
going
to a smaller. That's
going back almost felt like I was going. Middle school again in a sense.
Right.
But like I said, I'm very thankful for that school, just because without it, I mean, I probably wouldn't be here, because they made me punt, and that's what I ended up doing in the NFL. So
you honed your craft.
Yeah,
you got your reps there. That's cool.
I sure did.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it was. They're going to Tech now. I had a mandatory red shirt because I left after my freshman year there at the first school, but I came back to McKinney and did like community Collin College. Just to kind of make sure I wasn't behind on classes. But then supposedly I almost didn't get a transfer to Division I school, because Collin College had a basketball team in Plano, and they call it like a 4-2-4 rule. And so supposedly you can't transfer if they have like a sports team.
What's a 4-2-4 rule?
It's like you go from a 4-year to a 2-year with like a sport, and then back to a 4-year.
Okay, and there's a rule against that?
Yeah, in the NCAA.
Because they think you're just using it to your advantage.
Basically leaving one school, and then like first semester I went to Collin College.
Oh, yeah.
And then went to them in the fall.
And you're like, can I explain something? I'm a punter. I'm not trying, because at that point you didn't think NFL and all that, right? Like, were you thinking that direction?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, really? Okay.
I wasn't thinking like I'll be sophomore year going to the NFL.
Yeah.
But it was more like, okay, this is my process, because I knew I necessarily couldn't do it from there, so to speak. I wanted to get in a bigger kind of place, environment, just would help me.
Yeah.
So that's where
exposure too.
Right. Exactly.
Bigger games, you know.
Right.
When did you first know, like, I can really punt? Like, I can kick the hell out of this ball and also place it. Obviously, that's a huge part of it, too.
Yeah. I'm trying to think.
Probably on the 98th punt.
Right over the first year.
The last game, I really...
I don't know. I think it was more probably at Tech my junior year, once I was kind of splitting time with the senior, or my sophomore redshirt year, really. Yeah. Kind of like, okay, this could kind of be a thing. Now my first love was to play receiver. Like, that was my thing. Yeah. I wanted to do that. I didn't really want to kick. I just did it because I could. Played soccer growing up. And I was like, well, it could, it's not going to hurt. And thankfully I did, because it ended up paying off. But that's where kind of, because my grandfather's the one that actually kind of taught me. He coached for the Cowboys with Tom Landry. Oh, wow. Coached Super Bowls.
No kidding.
Yeah, so like he was
in his blood.
Yeah.
Right. So awesome. Dad and like a kicking coach that had a connection that I trained with, Chris Shaw, that was here locally, that kind of connected me to Tech, which was a great blessing as well. But
dude, cool.
Yeah, so it was once I kind of realized from him too, people were like, man, you could actually kind of be, because I was around a lot of the players, and you obviously travel around playing the Big 12 and things like that, and you kind of see your stats, because kicking and punting is more of a stat deal.
Yeah. Oh, it has to be.
It's not like, you got to watch him play.
The guy moves really well.
Right.
Guy moves well back there. It's like, no, does he punt well?
Right, exactly.
What are the key stats to know whether a punter is really good?
There is a part you kind of have to watch, but the net punt is like the main deal, especially in the NFL.
The net, what is that?
Including the return yards.
Oh, wow.
So you have the average and you have net.
Oh, interesting. Because within that,
to get it down there.
You're letting your team get down there.
Yeah.
Because if you're kicking just for distance, then you'll just kick line drives, and the guy has a full 6 seconds of running. And most of those guys in the NFL
will return it all the way.
Oh, it's game over, yeah. So, interesting. So net punt. Okay,
yeah.
I didn't know that. Cool. And then how does that span into kicking? Did you ever get into kicking off a tee or whatever?
Yeah, I did all growing up. I mainly did that. And then once I got to college, they wanted me to mainly punt because the punter at the time was going to be a senior. And so it's just like, okay, we got to have someone take over, which ended up playing out really well. So
have you seen a lot of guys with the whole Australian football come over and kind of impact the market, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually a guy at Tech that was he came in town. I called him. We kind of connected because I wanted to learn how to do it because he was from Australia. And he's pretty good punter, like the Aussie punts. He does it totally different than I would.
It's just nose down and.
Well, they have those guys can like
different
flip
balls. Too.
They can like flip the ball and like while it's spinning, they kick it like at the right time. So like they roll out and put it across. Like they do a bunch of different stuff.
I studied abroad in Australia, and they always were trying to get us to play like on campus.
Yeah.
I played one game. I'm like, this is way too much kicking. My foot was completely swollen because I had never done that. And they're like, yeah, it's just part of it. You're a pussy and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, this is not a real sport. This can't be a real sport. But when you watch it on, people are sponsored. It's a real sport. Don't give me that look. They were calling me a pussy and I didn't like it. This is my outlet. Anyway. So that's cool, man.
Yeah.
I do believe that you actually have to build up a propensity for that kind of thing in your feet,
Yeah, I used to play around in soccer. We used to play barefoot in the street. So
yeah, you're just used to it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely interesting with the soccer background because I can understand it kicking, but I mean punting that's a whole other. Besides, obviously you're using your leg, but I mean there's a lot of technique in punting, right?
And I mean that's where like having my grandfather involved, just because he was a big like sports science guy, and so he had like slow-mo cameras like to the. I mean, I don't know what the degree was where it was like super slow.
Whoa.
So he would record me all summer. We used to go 5 times a week at this field, and we'd just go and he would just record it. And
really cool.
He was in the science of like how the body moved, body mechanics, things like that from being a strength coach for the Cowboys. So it was like, hey, the body works like this in order to get the most power. It's like a science lesson, honestly.
Wow.
Which was really cool. So it taught me how to watch film. So I could sit and watch like one kick for probably 30 minutes, like breaking down things. That's how like intense it was. So like when I got to college, it just made it very easy. But like that kind of helped me understand like why, how, like what I wanted to do. It was really cool to be able to do that.
Really interesting.
So let me ask you this: if you were very analytical, which it sounds like from the film studies, are you able to go out and feel what you're being taught from an analytic standpoint?
Yeah, and that's where like obviously the practice is 10,000 hours, so to speak.
Right.
Because like you picture it, and you especially in slow mo, you see it happening, and so you kind of like picture an image in your mind of why you're doing it, and then when you do it, you're like, oh, that's what it's supposed to feel like. Because when you see it in film, you do it right once. It's like that's what it looks like.
Create that
now
pattern,
I know what it looks like,
and then it's muscle memory from then.
Yeah,
that's like I got golf lessons, and they did a lot of that slow mo stuff, and you start seeing the tiny little changes in your swing. Like, oh, my hips are way too, they're moving too fast on that one. Have you ever done that with golf, Bryce? Because I know you're super into golf.
Yeah. So my thing, and that's why I asked him, is because you can get me, on a video, and I can see where I, missed or messed up. But my thing, I'm such a feel guy, so I have to be able to feel it. If I feel it, then I can recreate it. But you going, hey, you need to, drop this attack angle by this.
Tough.
That doesn't tell me anything.
He's like, yeah, I know, but I can't get myself
to
exactly.
do it.
You have to feel like, my hands are too, not like,
right.
seeing your hands like that. Interesting, yeah. It's
Which
funny
is
how
cool.
we all learn differently,
Yeah, and that's a big thing, especially now with athletes and how, just from an athletic standpoint, people are getting so good so young, but it's how do you learn, right?
Yeah.
Because the technique that, your grandpa and Tom Landry taught those guys is still, to a degree, the same technique that we know now, but it's just the ability that these athletes have to get it, crush it, and then actually elevate.
Yeah.
But it's still all about how you learn those certain techniques.
I think that's where the biggest thing too is like from a young age being around that, and then my dad played football as well, and then all that kind of stuff. So it's like one of those things I kind of learned how to learn, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I was always a watcher, so like I would be the person if you were going to practice, I'd be sitting at the back of the line, and then when I go, I do it right. Like I wasn't usually the first guy, unless they told me to be. So it was always one of those things like, okay, I'm gonna watch how they do it. That makes sense. Okay, let's do it. And then that's kind of how I did it. So it ended up working out really well, just because I'm more of an observer. And then once I observe it, then I kind of like, okay, I know what it's supposed to look like, rather than just going back, well, let's see what happens.
Talked about this last week a little bit with Travis, experiential learning rather than like book learning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You seem like more of an experiential learner.
Yeah.
Do you read a lot of books?
Actually, yeah. So, I mean, just recently, it started happening, I guess, after my first year in the NFL, when we had a lot of downtime, I was like, man, like, I realized, like, first off, I had a lot of time, 2, I was like, I'm not really growing or learning anything right now because there's no school. Granted, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of stuff in school is like, this is kind of pointless. But when I was like, okay, I started studying like successful people, just in business, anything. And I was like, okay, well, these people are constantly like finding new ways, constantly learning, constantly talking about certain things. And I was like, man, what makes them successful? And obviously you have this term like readers are leaders, right? And I was like, okay, let's look into that and then kind of deal. Because I knew some guys I listened to, like, they're like, it doesn't matter. I just kind of go with it, and I just based off experience. Like, I just know. And there's some guys like, hey, well, the only way I gain experience is by reading someone else's experience they put in a book. And I was like, shoot, I'm young, I have time. Why not read someone else's 50-year story in a book in a week? Yeah. So I started reading. I finished 24 my first year, after like probably reading 2 books in my life.
That's super cool, man.
So it was one of those things I was like, let's just do it and see. And then now it's just kind of a thing I do.
It's just a habit,
trying to
and
go up.
that's such a good habit to get into, man. I put a lot of pressure on myself. Like, I'm in the middle of like 5 books right now, and I'm not very good at finishing books for whatever reason.
See, I can't do that many books. I have to do one at a time and finish it.
See, I need to be more like you, though, because I want to finish, you know?
Like,
I actually just started reading that Never Split the Difference book, which is so interesting, dude. It's about sales, negotiation. It's so interesting. But what's your favorite book, you think? Or who's your favorite leader that you liked reading about?
There's a bunch of books that I've read now. I think probably first off, I think one of the must read. It's a really small book. It's called As a Man Thinketh.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What's James something or whatever?
I think is it Napoleon Hill?
No, but it's in that same kind of line or whether.
Yeah.
They're all cousins. They're all cousins. I know exactly what you mean though. My friend Peter Yobo had me read that book a year ago.
It's like a little thin. It's like maybe 7 pages.
It only takes you like, and I listened to the Audible version, and I think it only took me like an hour
max,
to listen to the whole thing, but it's deep.
It's
like wisdom. Like,
you can
every
like read a page and be like, I can sit on this for a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's
one of
those
creating realities with your mind, pretty much. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like just changing the way you think, honestly, is what it's all about. Because in a sense, like, that's what catalysts every other book I'm reading. So it's just because that's all the books are trying to do. It's just giving you information to change like how you think about something. Because that's ultimately we're the person that keeps the limits on ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yep. Exactly.
So for a listener that maybe doesn't read, right, because of, and I probably fall fault to this, and that's probably why I'm asking it, but how is does your ability to retain, what you're reading affect, your everyday life outside of that? Because that's my thing. Because I've done your deal, right, where it's like I read a book but don't really finish it, pick up another one because it sounds cool, don't really finish it, and it's all, I think, centralized on the fact that, hey, what I'm retaining, which is probably a big thing, is I'm not retaining anything, but I'm not able to apply it because it's, it's like, hey, cool, it's a story.
Why do you think you struggle to? Because it's not like an intelligence thing. You're brilliant, but so like, why are you having trouble? Is it a focus thing? Like,
I think it is. But it's a focus and it's a drive, because you have to have a drive to read, right? I mean, you have.
Is it relatable to what you're doing?
Or is it more of like that book, Never Split the Difference? I mean, it's an awesome. It's very intriguing. It's about this guy that was with the FBI, but it was more on the negotiation side of things, and so his ability to, de-escalate. Is that a word?
That's right.
Okay, cool. Yeah. De-escalate situations, and then obviously come out with the situation I wanted to. But I only read half that book, and it was just, to me, I loved it because I'm kind of sort of in sales, but at the same time, it was just something that I was like, I don't know. I don't know if it's
what it also is I think you're a little bit like me. We get things pretty quick.
Yeah.
So half the time when I'm in the middle of a book, I'm like, I get it.
Yeah. Right.
And I get bored.
And that might be it.
And we don't want to admit that because it feels arrogant.
Right.
But it's also okay to be like, I get it.
Yeah.
My dad jokes about it. He's like, I skim books because like I get it. There's actually a site out there now where you subscribe or whatever, and like it's like $10 a month or something, and you can read 1 or 2 titles, but it just gives you the breakdown of the book.
Yeah.
I think that cheapens the experience because I like to get into a book, especially if there's any sort of story element. Like I want to experience it. Yeah. However, dude, I think what it is also is we have information overload right now, and so the idea of just sitting and like drinking in a book for like 20 nights.
Yeah.
I don't think we can even compute that. That's why Audible is so popular now. It pretty much converts books into podcasts for us.
It's true.
Yeah.
So that we can be driving, and then it's like, well, maybe only 20 or 30% of my brain is actually engaged in this dialogue that's happening, but I guess it's still getting in there to some degree.
Yeah.
I don't think we ruminate on things well enough. Like, it's better to read one thing and really let it saturate.
Yeah, because then you can, it's like.
Then you can apply it.
Right, that's exactly right.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's what I like physical copies. I do like Audible because I'm driving.
Yeah.
But what I noticed, because I did probably about 10 or so books on Audible, and I would be like,
this guy's a machine.
I was like, I can't basically retain some of the information because I'm usually driving. I'm like distracted.
Like Volvo, sorry.
Yeah, right.
Focusing on
exactly. So I'm trying to like think back, like what was that? Basically 30 minutes of me listening to I drove. Like what was that even? Thinking
and then you
about?
can't take notes too, right? Because you're like on your.
And then it's nice also to have like on my shelf. So I bought a bookshelf to fill it up. Yeah. And so I know what it's like where they are. And so I look at it.
It's not just for decorations, Jordan. That's my wife. I'm pretty sure. One, I'm gonna get hit for that, but two, I think it's just.
No, most women are like that. Yeah. They want it to look really cool and all
Continue.
that. But it's kind of cool because if you think about it, if I were to really, so like when my father dies, right, and I'm looking at his bookshelf and he's like, it'd be a great way to connect with him to be like, well, these are the things he read,
that's
and see his notes in there and stuff. Like that's gonna be cool,
That's actually kind of another reason I want to start reading too. Is like I'm gonna create a book collection for my kids. When I have them to be like, hey, these are the books that I've read all these books. I would start with XYZ and then eventually try to write my own. I'm actually writing a book right now, but try to write my own for just my kids to read. So like if something does happen, of course, that they have some kind of guidance and be like,
yeah.
Because I mean, once you get out, not even just out of college, just in life in general, it's like, hey, figure it out. Because not many people have it figured out until it's almost late. And usually,
it'd be nice to just have like some grounding principles or something. Like, have you heard of John Wooden's story?
Oh, phenomenal.
I love John Wooden, dude.
Yeah.
His dad, he left home early. He was like a coach or a teacher apprentice or something. He left his hometown in like Oklahoma or some remote city to be really when he was young. I think he was like 17 or 18 or was probably right after high school. But his dad gave him a little card with just like 6 principles for like a happy life or whatever.
Yeah.
And he has now turned those into like, he's based all of his teachings off of those guiding principles.
Yeah.
And the simplicity is powerful there.
100%.
Instead of giving a kid a heap of books, give him like 6 guiding principles he can keep coming back to.
Yeah.
I think that's cool that you're already thinking about that kind of stuff. And you're not even married yet. Usually marriage is what makes you start thinking about that kind of stuff.
I'm a big legacy guy, and I think it's probably from like stemming from my grandfather, because I'm coaching for the Cowboys. That's always a thing. Like, hey, I want to try to like complete the circle, try to go back to the Cowboys. Was like my thing. Because it's kind of left in a different way, and I don't want to get into that, but it was one of those things like, hey, I want to make it kind of right again, if that makes sense. Because he's in the Ring of Honor, so it's cool and everything, but it was just one of those things I wanted to do. But it was always, because I always looked up to him, and the way he was he was a future thinker. Like he basically, he invented like the NFL draft before it came. So like the Cowboys at the time he would run them through the drills which we have like the 40, all these different things, because he was in the science. So he would basically
metrics and all that.
He would basically look and be like, okay, this guy's gonna be a good athlete.
So how does that? Well, I want to talk about this after the break. I think I want to talk about how that mentality kind of stretches into like business and what you're working on now.
Yeah.
But kind of give us the highlight of what you're working on now.
Yeah. So
you said you're writing a book.
Yeah. So I'm writing a book. I wrote it last year actually, but it was more of like just with the content. And then I wanted to go back and write like the stories that connect it. So that way it'd actually be an easier read.
So it's more of a creative process, and now you're going to go add some structure and stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
And then after I finish that, I want to get someone to kind of like not ghostwrite it, but like go back through and edit it and make sure it like makes sense and grammatically correct.
Cohesive and all that.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I want to, hopefully, my goal is to get it done by next year, so next August. So that's be hopefully done by then. Cool. And then basically what else I'm doing, I guess, is I'm obviously training kids right now. So I train a lot of kids. My brother's a coach, so a lot of his kids kind of funnel this way, which is nice. So a lot of kickers and punters, receivers as well.
Cool.
But mainly right now I'm getting into the insurance world. A real good friend of mine, I actually know from church, as well as he played basketball in semi-pro. Very successful guy. He was one of my mentors growing up. And he was one of those guys I was like, I just want to learn from this guy. I was always that kid growing up that was like, I just want mentors that are older than me, because they've been through it, and I want to figure out like, how do you get to that point without having to fall?
It goes back to your watch the guy do it first example.
Right, exactly. So he was one of those guys, and then he actually, once I finished, kind of like once I thought basically after the NFL, I was like, man, what can I be doing next? Because I don't want to just sit around and do nothing. Because I had a lot of free time. Like especially when you're back home training, waiting for the next call, it's like, man, you work out, you got maybe like you sleep, say 8 hours, then you go work out for maybe, let's say for the day.
You also just don't want it to be like your only thing. It's like,
I had 12
there's
hours.
life outside football. Like, you know?
And that was always my thought too. Like, first off, I had 12 hours outside of training and sleep. I was like, what am I going to do with those 12 hours? I can't sleep all day, which I tried to do that first early on. But then it was more like, once even if I get a great career and I retire, I mean, what am I just going to sit around and be like, oh, the glory days? Like, I was never that kind of person. Yeah, exactly. So you
got right into it too, Bryce.
Yeah, very similar. I mean,
you could still ultimately play if you wanted to, like Alliance or something, right?
You look like you could play.
Yeah. Thank you.
Keeps it tight.
My wife got this shirt for me. It's a medium.
It's a medium.
But yeah, no. It's thanks, buddy. Yeah, I think you had to have that mindset, with anything, especially for us. It's NFL's not for long, right? So on to bigger better
it's
things.
just a stepping stone, It's just like anything,
I wouldn't trade it for anything.
I've been getting the wrap-up signal for a good 14 minutes now, so let's just end this segment.
We'll be back.
We'll be back. What's up, guys? We want to give a quick kudos to our primary sponsor, Otswa Publishing. Now, Bryce and I knew nothing about podcasting before having a few jam sessions with them, and they made us less pathetic and more game ready in just 3 weeks. If you need your story told in a raw, authentic way and want to meet some amazing dudes in the process, check out Otswa Publishing. That's OUTSWA Publishing. However, best way to see what they're all about is on their new YouTube channel. It's called Christianity Uncensored. Yep, you heard it right.
Perfect. And we're back for exciting next 30 minutes. The first 30 minutes I thought was awesome. But so I kind of want to get into a little bit, our structure that we normally do is the source, roots, and path and summit. But I think, that encompasses for us the wilderness. And so instead of kind of going into each of those segments, I think it'd just be really cool to just, what is your wilderness right now? What does that look like, maybe past, present?
Yeah. I think the thing that definitely comes to mind for wilderness was, it was my first year out of college. I basically got hurt my senior year, missed 6 games right in the middle of the season against some ranked teams, to where, like, before that I was leading the country in stats for kickoffs and punts. Wow. So, like, I was like, okay, cool, we have it.
Right.
Senior year, perfect time. Then I get hurt, miss 6 games, come back for the last 2. And I don't qualify for any, like, the Ray Guy Award, anything like that. And so going into basically draft.
Ray Guy, which is the award for the best
punter. It's like the Bednarik or whatever.
Yeah, so you have to have a certain amount of kicks to even basically be involved in that. And only playing, 5-6 games.
Right.
Didn't allow me to do that.
That sucks.
So it was one of those things where I was like, man, like, you're 22 at the time. You're like 22 years to this moment of this one day almost, and you're like, I missed half the season. So it's just like, and you were doing, like, I was doing really well. I was able to still finish with my stats top 9 in the country.
Wow.
But at the same time, I didn't have enough kicks. So it's like, it kind of looks different. It's like, hey, maybe would you be able to keep that up? Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things to where going in, I was like, maybe they'll still think. And I had some teams talking about draft and stuff like that. But it was like, okay, I hope. And then the 2 teams I went out to rookie minicamp my first year were like, hey, I don't know if you're healthy. One wanted me to get surgery, and they weren't going to pay for it. And I had to pay for it, and they weren't going to guarantee a spot. So I was like, I'm fine. You're just kind of, I just don't know what you're seeing, because I had some other doctors look at it too, just to make sure. And then my dad's a doctor, so that definitely helped. But the other 2 teams were like, yeah, I just don't know. I can't trust it. If you're not healthy,
they need like a sure thing at punter, like, because they only have like 1 or maybe 2 roster spots for that.
No,
right?
just 1.
Just so, 1. Yeah.
So like if they get hurt, they'll kick or follow, and then they'll call you during the week. So it's like it's it could be top 32, only 32 really.
Yeah.
So at that time, it was like, okay, go home, and I'm like, it wasn't that I wasn't good enough. It was that they were scared, and I was like, shoot, like now I got to sit at home, and that word's getting passed around the league, of course.
You had to give a lot. You had to take some steps to not have a lot of like anger build up, I bet.
Oh, I mean, this is where I'm about to go. Like this is my wilderness this year.
Yeah.
So like one of my things going into college was like, I never want to be the guy that come back home and work at a random place, like just anywhere, like just random, like just
a Pennzoil or like a
just like a random like
Enterprise
you work 4
car.
hours and then you whatever.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
so like that was
you want to commit. Like,
yeah.
I don't know why Pennzoil came to mind.
It's like
like Pennzoil.
Yeah.
So like that was my thing. I didn't want to come home and have a job like that and then live at home again and be like man, why did I go to college? I basically was here in high school. So like that was my thing. So once that happens, I come back home and I'm basically all what I didn't want to do, I'm doing. Having to find like a random job just to make money, having to train at home, live at home, still got chores. I mean, I'm out of college. Like, you live on your own. Now you're living back with your parents. Totally different. And I'm very grateful my parents let me stay with them. So it's like, it's really nice. But at the same time, I was like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
So it was a tough deal.
Tough.
But that full year was just like, because I'm a believer. So like at that time, like growing up, that's where I've always struggled, not say struggled, but it was always like okay, how do I do this or balance really the whole thing of like God and sport, and like, do they intermingle? Do they not? Like, how does this work? So like my thing was, okay, like, because I never did anything stupid. Like I wasn't like just dumb to make all that kind of stuff.
Seemed like you were like a really good kid, you know?
Yeah,
like
so like
straight and narrow kind of kid.
Yeah,
like you weren't getting drunk a lot in high school, right?
No, I mean
you feel like you were just like a really good kid.
So one of those things was because like
I feel like he was a good kid. I feel like he was a really good kid.
He's gonna keep saying that. Bryce, do you disagree?
Bryce is like, I think
you were a dirtbag.
No, I just feel like you guys had a relationship previous to him coming on here.
It's a bro moment.
It was a bro moment, exactly.
I felt it.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna let you talk.
Good, clean kid.
I'm gonna lean back here.
Please continue. So like for me, it was one of those things to be like, okay, like I'm gonna try to do the right thing, and maybe God will reward me with this dream. So it was like, okay, then it became too intermingled to where I was like, oh, like how do I separate these? They were the same thing. So like if football didn't go well, I was like, God, what's up? And now it was like it was a struggle there because I was like, well, that doesn't really work. So like at that time, I was like, okay, I've worked for 23 years for this one moment, kind of trying to do the right thing, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm like, shoot, like, okay, it wasn't like I wasn't ready. It wasn't like I wasn't good enough. It was just like something happened.
Situational stuff you can't control.
Yeah.
Stuff you can't
control. And so I was like, okay, I can't control it. So like, God, where you at? Like you can control.
It's kind of your area now.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So for
I've been there, man. Yeah.
For me, it was like, shoot, like, okay, now I got to build it. For me, it was like a belief thing. It was like, all right, all things off the table, start from zero. And everywhere in my life. So like, but it started in my faith. Like it wasn't like I didn't believe. I was like, I know, but at the same time too, I was like, okay, like where did I get this wrong? Because something collapsed everything. So
would you call it like a state of rebellion or a state of just kind of being like,
probably
it's not working?
I guess it would be rebellion. I mean, because it was one of those things where I don't know if it'd be rebellion because I still did like belief wise, but it was more of like, it's just I didn't understand. Because I gotta read, I would be like, but that contradicts here. And this contradicts here, and it was like the contradict game I played. Instead of being like, okay, I started with like, okay, one thing I know is right. Then I'd be like, okay, when I get something else, we'll stack it on top. And then I just basically build it back up from there. And then that's kind of where I got into reading, kind of got all this stuff. Because I was like, man, I got to kind of, in a sense, be the own hero to my story. So like I had to be, because like a lot of times I would put things on, and I blamed, let's say God, for example, for not doing something I could have easily done. In a sense. And so it became like, okay, like I'm waiting for him to save the day. Right.
So you wanted God to prove himself in your story.
Right, exactly. Right. Instead of be like, hey bro, I gave you everything you need.
Dude, like I did my end of the deal.
Yeah. So it was one of those things to where it just kind of, it basically made me get to the point where all like the blame I put through my life of things going bad in football was like, God, that's your fault. All right. Instead of being like, hey, take ownership, stop blaming people. It's on you. So
I blamed a lot of interceptions on God. Like a lot of them. I think every one of them actually was his fault.
Well, at least you guys got the chance. I blame being 5'10" on God. Okay? No, but I know exactly that feeling, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, though, because I think in those seasons, sometimes you need the things in your life to start kind of not working out to get to the point where you realize that, like, God loves you regardless of performance and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Like, he loved you way before you even had those goals.
Right.
You know?
You had the Bruce Almighty problem, right? Where if you just start answering yes to all your prayers, then, you know, everybody wins the lottery. Everybody has the CEO job. Everybody's in the NFL.
There's like 88 punters in the NFL.
Right. and it plays, you know, when you play God, right, then there's not the hope and the faith that you need God.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
That's where that trust comes in. Yep. It's hard to trust him, you know?
That's where faith is,
yeah. No, and so that's for me, it was like, okay, like I had to start from zero. So like that was the point of like, okay, everything's kind of been all right. I kind of watched, tried to learn from people so I wouldn't fall to this place.
Yeah.
And then I fell to that place. I'm like, oh, this is what it's like. But it ended up being like the greatest thing in my life, honestly, because from that point I was like, like I'm never like that was probably the worst time of my life that year. So like anything now, I'm like, I mean, I got it. I mean, that was everything. Like, cause at the same time, faith was kind of a wreck, career is a wreck, and then also had a girlfriend in college that same year, and it was like at that point she was playing overseas soccer. And then I was here traveling, and it was just like, hey, we kind of end this thing.
Tough, yeah.
So it's like all three of the things are like, hey, like this is what you got to put, like, you know, your career,
your world's
your faith,
like completely different.
And I'm like, okay, like everything just hit the fan. Like, what's up? So starting over in every area.
That sounds like a wilderness season for sure.
So I was like, and in the moment, I was just pissed. I was like, it was one of those moments. Just like, man, you know, how many hours can I sleep today? Like, so now you don't have to deal with it.
Just avoid it.
Right. Yeah. And so,
and other people medicate with a lot of worse stuff than sleep.
Right.
So like it got to the point where I was like, man, okay. And then thankfully, I mean, this is how God works, of course, is I had one buddy of mine that's, I mean, he's a super good dude, happened to be back in Plano, like basically 15 minutes from my house. Very faith-filled guy, pretty intense, like non-emotional dude, which is great for me in that moment. Because that moment is like, I'm not an emotional guy, but at that moment I was like, all these emotions everywhere. Like, I don't know what to think, what to do. And so like we would walk through stuff, and it came to the point where it was like, I would just kind of, not even like rant to him, but then he'd like tell me something like, yeah, you're right. But I just needed to like say something. And so like it was just a lot of timing. But basically like that wilderness part of my life basically prepared me for, I mean, obviously not only now, but for future stuff, because I know like how to get out of something. Yeah. And I think that's even better gift than, in a sense, like I would love to play in the NFL and all that kind of stuff. But now it's like it transfers everything. I don't have to worry about.
You're more equipped now for anything, right?
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where it's like I'm not scared of failing again. Yeah. Like before it was like I'm watching these people so I don't fail. Mm-hmm. Now like I failed at everything, so to speak, and I'm like, oh, that's all there is. Let's go. Yeah. Like so it became a mind shift.
It's like that moment you realize your fears, when they become realities, you're still breathing and everything, and then you can start doing things out of love and out of like the right motives rather than preventing that fear from happening, because it already happened. It's like it's over.
Yeah.
I think God lets us fail sometimes just to be like, yo, you're all right. I'm gonna pick you back up, and you're actually stronger now, you know, and you know, maybe you have a thicker spine at that point, or maybe you're more equipped. You know what your gifts are. Maybe, I mean, you probably never would have started writing your book if you hadn't gone through some of that. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So like the book itself was more of, after I kind of went through that and read all these books, I was like, man, like I want to almost write a book for myself previous to this. So like
interesting.
So like
write a book to yourself.
Yeah.
Before all these things happen.
Yeah.
So based on your mindset then, or your mindset now, what you know to kind of
so
help
like
out,
basically like all the stuff I learned in that wilderness, so to speak, like write a book from the things I learned in that to that person that hadn't gone through that yet.
That's a really interesting concept.
It is. And it's kind of cool too when you break it down. It's interesting that you like you just said that you read books so that you wouldn't fail. Yeah. But what you learned is that you had to fail.
Yeah, it was a mind trick.
That's the irony. That's cool.
So, it was really weird. Because that's where I started to be like, why? Like then it became like, okay, now I got to run every one of my fears, and that was like my thing for like a year. That year was like anything I fear I don't like to do, I'm gonna do it. Stupid stuff too. I'm scared of heights. I was like, okay, let's go on some stuff I'm really scared of, just to like train myself.
Bryce went skydiving recently.
Yeah. See, I didn't do that whole skydiving. I did like this whole thing. I forget what the name of it. There's like a little place to do it. I can't remember, but basically, I started running
it. Did you cliff jump or what?
I can't remember what it was called.
You just went high somewhere?
Yeah, who knows where it was.
Did you Google high? Yeah. You get some weird stuff's going to pop up on that.
Right, no doubt.
I'd like to get high. That's funny. Okay, so interesting. So you're like fully written on that?
So I've written probably, I think 60, 70 pages. And then that's single spaced, so like it's probably gonna be I don't know how many pages there.
Oh, that was my favorite. Sorry, back in school.
I just forgot about
write
that.
It single,
3 or 4 pages single, and you're like double.
Yeah, like 6 pages.
12.
Yeah.
Start messing with margins. And stuff.
For sure.
See, for me, it was more like, how do I pack all of this into the 4-page limit or the 20-page limit? Because I just love to write. I love to write.
I can see that. Yeah. I can see you writing a book too.
Yeah.
So you have the content, you have 60, 70 pages, like you said, and now you're gonna go backfill that with a little bit more structure on your end, or are you wanting somebody to kind of come in and help you backfill that structure?
I'll probably do both. For me, I'm gonna connect them with like stories to make it more personal.
Yep. Have to. Yep.
For me, it was more of like I wrote it like, hey, this is what it is, like hardcore truth type stuff.
Yeah.
And so, but that's not easily.
People can only handle so much of that.
Yeah. Right. So it's just one of those things where like, okay, this is how it works, because the whole concept, like I wrote it off of like the fascination between I wanted to be successful and I love flying. I don't know what it is about like being in airports.
You hate heights, but you love flying?
Yeah,
like
weirdest
full
thing.
Of contradictions.
Right.
Yeah,
So
know,
like
right?
it was, I loved airports. I love going somewhere because it's a place of movement. And so like I know I'm going somewhere. So like, but flying too, I love flying.
It's like an achievement thing. Like
I don't know.
You look back on your work when you're deboarding and you're like, I did that.
Place of movement. I haven't heard it put that way.
I've never heard that.
Do you actually, and I had a buddy of mine that I was sitting around this weekend with actually, and he said that he actually journals every day, but it's not journaling like how your day was. It was like journaling to find himself. Like what about today or things that he's thought about define, or how does it define him, right? And so I think it's kind of cool that you said place of movement, because it almost seems like that you've learned that about yourself. Like it's not just flying, but it's actually the act of moving, which is kind of cool. I don't know.
Yeah. And you're doing the same thing kind of proverbially when you're journaling about your journey. Yeah, you're kind of moving. I like
Have you ever done that, or is that just kind of something cerebrally?
I do like, I'm very like organized and disciplined, so I'll do like certain things at night. Like I'll ask certain questions that I have that I'll ask about the day. Like it takes like 30 minutes and I plan my next day.
Can you share those?
You
what
spend
kind of
30 minutes every night doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I respect that.
That is
Let's
cool.
do that. Let's
do you
talk
have
about
what kind
that.
of questions are they?
And if this is like too intimate.
Yeah,
no. It's
okay,
like
okay.
I bought a book from, I don't know who it was, and it was in his book. And so like it's an actual planner with like nightly questions and the morning ones. I don't do the morning ones because I don't need it. And then the night ones is the ones I do. It's basically like reflecting back. So like I'll pick like, I think one was like, what was one thing you learned today?
That's cool.
And it just makes you kind of reflect, because what happens is I would notice I'll just go to sleep and I wake up and be like, at the end of the week, I'd always want to have like, what I learned this week. And if I didn't write down one thing, I'm like, oh, like where are my notes? So like I had no idea. So if it would at least give me some structure to that, but also too allow me to decompress. So like right before bed, it allowed me to fall asleep faster, because I'd be like, I started training my body. When I started doing this, my body knows it's time to go to sleep.
It's cool. Almost like closure on the day kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So that makes me think of a quote. One of my favorite quotes is from Socrates. It's a life unexamined is not worth living. And it's all about like, hey, if we don't evaluate what's going on in our lives and journal and like reflect on the day, even like taking moments of gratitude, they've proven that like being grateful, for 3 things at the end of the day significantly increases your happiness, because you're forced to find the positive in your day. Yeah. Even if it was a crappy day, right? Yeah. But I think examining our lives allows us to really know like, where am I? Where am I going? Yeah. And to not repeat the same mistakes over and over and over again.
Yeah. And the nice thing about gratefulness I learned, because I had to do that in like that wilderness period, I was like, okay, what is one thing I can like cool, I made my bed, check. Like, just that's a great thing.
Dumbest little things, right?
Yeah. And then I started realizing you can't be grateful and angry. You can't be grateful and upset at the same time. Yep. So I was just like, okay, cool. Like if I'm grateful, then those things have to sit aside. Yeah. So the longer I can stay that way, then obviously the better. I don't have to deal with emotion. So I learned to like basically control my emotion in a sense. Which
discipline,
and good. So but going back to the what was the question?
Something you learn, right? Yeah, the thing you do every night.
Okay, yeah. So like something to learn, I'm trying to remember, like if you were like, let's say, I forget the wording they use, is basically like if you were a like a life coach, what would you say to yourself?
Oh wow,
that's not a quick answer either. Yeah.
What else is
Get your shit together, Taylor.
Right. Golly, that'd be ridiculous. But does it keep you in the present as well? I mean, as much as, because I think what I struggle with a lot is the chess moves like you were alluding to earlier, where you're always planning ahead, and if you're always planning ahead, one, I've found that you feel like you have control over things, and that's just not so, right? And then 2, you never really hear. You know, like being here with you guys is it's cool, and it's something that I'm actually going to start doing that. I'm going to go tonight and just kind of talk about the things that you've learned, or that I've learned from you, but it keeps you here. Yeah,
because that was the thing, actually, going off of what you just said. Like for me, it was like a buddy of mine, his name's Chris Watson, told me, he's like, be present where your feet are. So I was like, cool. So now that's where I created, like, I'm very structured in my day for that reason. So I'll create that 30 minutes for me to reflect. And I have to start I'll schedule on Sundays. I'll do like look over my finances for the week. Like I'll schedule time so I can be present there, so I don't have to do it every day. So like while the day's going on, I can be present then and not have to worry about the future, because I plan time to think about the future.
Dude, I can't wait till you
like
get
me,
married.
Like we are, like I'll be talking to my wife and she's like, "You're not here." And that's my biggest thing, because I'm always thinking, my brain is hyperactive, and that's why they train you. Meditation is so good for you, because it forces you to like identify thoughts and then like just allow them to be thoughts, but like recognize that thought is happening and kind of own it, rather than just and then it's just because that causes a lot of worry and a lot of stress. But one of the habits of really highly successful people, I don't know if it's in that book, but something I've read recently is the most successful people are where they are. Like, now I've always wondered, like, okay, in the shower, like, what does it look like to be there? Like, okay, shampoo. Like, I don't think it's like that. I think you can like let your brain go in the shower a little bit, but when I'm with my wife, I need to be with my wife. Yeah. When I'm at work, like working through an issue, I need to be working through that issue. Yeah. When I have that window open on my laptop, I need to be on that window in the laptop for like 10 minutes, not poking around and doing too much stuff. Because and I think our generation needs to learn that more than a lot of other skills, because we just have so much information being thrown at us constantly.
And that's actually one of the chapters in my book. It's called Airplane Mode. And that's what like basically in a sense changed my life, because my whole story about my book, it's a theme. It's like taking flight. So it's a contradiction of like, I'm scared of heights, but I want the success of going to the heights. Right. So it's
like a duality there. Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. Like I basically take it through a process from like the time you get a ticket, you have to know your vision, kind of like that kind of deal. To where obviously airplane mode, when you're in the air, you have to be focused. You can't have an internet connection. Cool. So for me, like in my life during that time, before I even thought about the book, I just turned my phone on airplane mode, so I couldn't get any calls, couldn't get any texts, because people would text me like, "Hey, how's it going? How's training going?" And I didn't want to deal with it, so I just turn it off and be like, "Hey, this is me time. Don't even want to hear it. Don't even want to get a phone call from anything like that." So then it just became that time, like, "Hey, I'm setting aside this time to where no one can get in touch with me," because basically I got to get in touch with myself, if that makes sense. Yeah. And to where it was like, okay, like once I noticed, I started creating this time that I didn't have to like deal with it in the moment while like someone was talking to me. I was like, man, I'm struggling with this. If I would have created that time in the day, I could be present with this person, because now I already created the time for it. So I don't have to worry about, I've already dealt with it. So now with them, I'm like, yeah, what's up? Like, I don't have to worry or think about like, I could do this later, because I've already scheduled. Like, hey, I got to leave at 2 because I got to go do this. So it just made it easier for me to make decisions and be like, hey, the hardest part for me was like when you're telling someone like, what do you got to do? I'm like, sometimes like, I got to make a meeting. I got a meeting. And I'm like, really, it's like a meeting with myself. Because people are like, oh, we're going to go do whatever. I'm like, well, you wouldn't understand. Right? You know what I'm saying?
So they're going to be like, what?
That's cool. That's
right.
Really cool.
So sometimes I had to do it like at certain places to where it was like, because I was at home at the time too. So I'd have to leave and go somewhere else just because, I mean, family walks in, hey, what's up? Can you help?
Yeah.
I'm like, so.
You got to set some boundaries,
cool.
you know?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So wrapping up too, I mean, this has been awesome, by the way. But so if you have your wilderness, how old are you?
26.
26. Yeah. So you've kind of already had an interesting wilderness, or at least footsteps into the wilderness. So what does, as we kind of wrap up, what's, for us and then our viewers too, what does that wilderness look like for you, down the road? I mean, is it continue on the book and staying in the present, that kind of thing? And
yeah, I think the one thing I learned is I had to fall in love with the process. So like growing up, it was, I'm going to work hard for this moment, and then I'll be like, yes, and then I'm gonna enjoy that moment. Instead, what I need to do is enjoy the process, and the moments just come. So like for me, because think about football, for example, you train 23 years for the NFL, and then like, oh, like I made it. Instead of like falling in love with training, falling in love with watching, all that towards a lifestyle.
The relationships you build along the way.
Yeah. So ultimately, that's what's gonna keep you there, is being able to maintain it. So for me, it's like, hey, fall in love with doing it, like being constantly growing, constantly doing that stuff.
That is so good, because then all the pressure is kind of relieved too, and then you're more content with the work and with the time and with the relationship.
Because that's what you love to do,
and that's the stuff that you're gonna take with you, even when you're gone.
That's awesome.
That's really cool, man.
It's hard to wrap this session up, man. I could talk for a while.
Before we go, we do this thing called check it out.
Okay.
Or check this out. What's one thing we've tried recently that we just love that we would recommend someone try out? It can be a podcast. It can be a snack. It can be a movie. It doesn't really matter.
Let's see. Probably depends on what your viewers are. He's a pretty intense guy. He cusses kind of a bit. He's an ex-military guy.
Jocko Willink?
No. You've heard of David Goggins?
David Goggins? No.
Oh, okay.
Does he have a podcast?
No. He's a very he doesn't like social media, but at the same time too, if you listen to his story, you'll understand.
He has a big Instagram.
Yeah, he guy kills it on IG, but he hates social. I'm like, okay.
So like I'll get a little backstory on him. He's like the most. He's been a Navy SEAL. He's been through like 3 hell weeks and that kind of deal. In 1 year, he's run like 100. It's hard even just to do justice. This guy. He's recognized because he's been Army Ranger, Navy SEAL.
Dude, I feel like I've heard that name now that I think about it.
He's super intense.
Total badass.
He's super intense, and his whole thing is like your mind. Once you hit like that place where you're like, I'm done. He's like, you only tapped into 40%, and so like, but he's super like I said, he's super intense. But that guy he stretches me like at least like right now.
But how do you? Is it content? Like how are you?
Yeah, it's video.
Oh, it's video.
Yeah,
like
he's on a lot of people's podcasts. Actually, he travels around his people's podcasts.
Okay.
David Goggins. There's a lot. He actually came out with a book recently. He said, I think it's called "You Can't Hurt Me" or something like that.
So it's about like testing the capacities that we place on ourselves, kind of thing.
And the like limitations, limitations, and then like sacrifice is a must. His whole thing, because his whole story is like he was overweight. It's hard to explain the whole thing.
Yeah, but just a crazy story, one of those crazy redemption stories. Yeah,
you should listen to it. Maybe.
Okay. Chris Goggins.
You know Joe Rogan? No, David Goggins.
Dave Goggins. I'm like just butchering it. I'm like Christopher Groggins.
You know who Joe Rogan is?
Yeah.
Okay,
Rogan Experience or whatever.
Yeah, so he's actually on there if you want to listen to that.
Okay,
cool. He's like a big podcast guy. So.
Yeah, Rogan's been trying to get tips on our podcast for weeks.
I think he actually started annoying because we started this.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, we're gonna end on that.
Right, dude, it's awesome.
Dude, thanks for coming out, man. Thanks for coming out. This is awesome, and we're excited to see what happens with the book and all that, and I'll make some connections for you too that might be able to help.
Awesome.
That could be cool.
Sweet.
Sounds good, man. That's a wrap. Beautiful. Thanks.